Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to Dr. Khadija, my fellow friends from 7A and 7B. I hope you are in a very good health and are ready to listen to our presentation for today. So I hope you can grab a snack or a coffee or a drink and listen to us.
I must be in work unless I am ill, dying, or meeting Princess Anne for a Princess Royal Training Award.
Stuff you've got to do, stuff you should do but won't do.
I don't think I could begin to scratch the surface of my job if I stuck to directed time.
I usually leave school about 6:30.
You're driving home from work, processing the order of what you're going to do when you get home.
What have I got to do tomorrow?
You're going to do your marking first.
You want to mark it thoroughly, that's going to take you half an hour.
I hate marking. I really hate marking.
I don't know what 30 times 30 minutes is, but it's a lot.
Do we need to mark as much as we do? No.
Mark the important things. Just be smart in your planning.
When I was at school, they wrote good, poor, tick. It worked.
At one point I recorded the hours that I was working and I worked over 187 hours in 17 days.
That's not a normal job. That's not a normal expectation on anyone with a job.
I kept going because I just had to keep going till the GCSE and A-levels.
There was a bit of negative behaviour in the classroom and I just kind of said to the students, I don't know what to do. You're ruining the learning for others. And that just made me then start crying in front of them.
There isn't a teacher that would tell you they don't think of quitting, I don't know, every few months.
Had an impact on my health.
I felt like a failure. When I had that breakdown, I felt like a failure.
I genuinely believe that it doesn't have to be this way.
This is where school leaders need to be doing a bit more. In some schools, to just ease the pressure a little bit.
There was a lot of accountability that kind of put lots of stress onto me. And there were numerous times when I just wanted to leave the profession. And I eventually had a breakdown and came very close to leaving the profession.
In a survey of more than 8,500 teachers, 2 in 5 plan to leave the job within 5 years. Most, that's 3 in 5, blamed their workload, and around half said their work-life balance was worse in the last year.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life.
Despite a government campaign to attract teachers, today's survey suggests hundreds of thousands are thinking of quitting. But on the front line, many teachers are feeling the pressures of the job, both in terms of time and money needed in the classroom.
Okay, in this video, me and my group mates will be presenting on one of the current issue in education, which is teachers' workload. As you can see, we divided the contents into 4, which are introduction to the issue, causes of teachers' workload, evidence of teachers' struggle with workload, as well as impacts of teachers' workload. So with Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, let's start. My name is Nur Aishah binti Aman and I will be presenting the first part of this presentation, which is introduction to the issue. So let's start with the definition of teachers' workload. Herald 1984 refers workload as to all activities that involves teachers' time, whether it is directly or indirectly. Muhammad Shukri 1988 refers workload as to responsibilities assigned to teachers, whether it is inside or outside of classroom. Meanwhile, Azita 2012 refers workload as responsibilities expected to be performed by teachers, although not favorable. And these responsibilities can vary from teaching and learning, co-curricular activities, file management, meetings, and etc. Lastly, workload is the total time a teacher teaches in class, as well as the time allocated to accomplish the work or official duties in school or after school hours, meaning to say that the duties and responsibilities as well as the time spent for it are heavily connected when it comes to workload. So the more work they have to do, the more time it took for them to finish the work. Next, let's take a look at the teacher's job scope, aka roles and responsibilities of teachers. I have highlighted the adjectives of what teachers do in school, and these are just the general job scope of teachers. So of course the first thing is teachers have to teach students based on curriculum. They have to plan, prepare and deliver lessons. They have to encourage students' participation. They have to support leadership, team in school, and they have to assess and report on the behavior of students. They also have to provide educational and social guidance, or signposting them to specialist area when needed. They also have to ensure the quality and apply the most up-to-date teaching methods. They also have to take part in opportunities where they can boost their own learning and professional development. They also have to attend and take part in meetings. They also have to, lastly, they have to collaborate with parents, carers, and anyone related to the school system. Yeah. Now, these are some of the extra roles and responsibilities that could result in more workload for teachers. If I were to list out the roles in details, it would be too much, so I just categorize them into main areas that are related to these extra roles and responsibilities for teachers. So the first one is new initiatives, both school and externally driven. So schools often have new initiatives in order to improve a lot of aspects that they find lacking in their school system. For example, they would launch programs, they would have events like the mentor-mentee programs in order for them to improve their school performance, something like that, and which obviously these initiatives would involve teachers at all times. Next is administration and compliance. Now these are more towards clerical work such as data entry, answering phone calls, sorting and filing documents. This is more like office clerk type of task, which would give the teachers more work to do. Next is appraisal, attestation, registration requirements. Now appraisal related to assessing someone, so teachers have to assess students' behavior or anything related to the students. And then attestation is more teachers have to write reports and have to do some type of declaration in order for them to prove that they did something, that they did their work. And of course registration requirements, which all three of these would result in more paperwork for the teachers. Next is class sizes that are too large. Now I read that the average class size should be 20 to 24 students per class, but you know, most public schools in Malaysia have over 30 students or sometimes more. This means that the teachers have to handle more students at a time. Next point is undertake co-curricular or extracurricular activities. Now this related to more where teachers are assigned with to handle a sports club or co-curricular clubs, as well as if there's events or competition where teachers would have to skip their class and because they have to go to accompany these students that went into competition, that sometimes they have to go out of school, they have to go to another district, something like that. Yeah. Last point is problems with information technology. Of course, this has been a requirement recently, but for teachers who has been teaching for 20 years back, they don't learn how to teach with technology back then, so it's a struggle for them to continuously improving along with the updated trends and teaching methods. Okay, moving on, I gathered some research and survey report on teaching hours and teaching practices. This is a 2013 OECD and TALIS report on how teachers spend their time in classroom. I put the definition for OECD and TALIS in the next slide if you wanted to see that. So yeah, on average, teachers should spend 80% of their time teaching, 10% to keep classroom in order, and another 10% in administrative tasks. But in Malaysia, survey finds that our teachers spend 71% of their time for teaching, 12% for keeping classroom in order, and another 17% in administrative tasks. So it's quite astray from the average. In terms of teaching practices in Malaysia, and this is based on the OECD report I find online, so it said that on average our teachers spend fewer hours per week teaching compared to other countries, which is we spend 17 hours and other countries spend 19 hours, something like that. Next, our teachers spend fewer hours in the planning and preparing for lessons compared to other countries. Next, our teachers spend more hours per week marking and correcting, which is, I assume that's not a good thing if teachers spend more time on marking and correcting and not on teaching and learning. These next 3 points is related to the chart that I've shown you before, where our teachers spend more of their time on administrative tasks and keeping the classroom in order, and our teachers spend less time on actual teaching and learning, which I think this report reflects that there's still some lacking in our teaching practices. So yeah, and these are the definition for TALIS and OECD. Now, despite the results from the report in 2013, there are still enormous number of recent finds that said teachers' workload is still an issue among many countries in the world, and what I'm about to show you here is some of the sources that I find online that still talks about teachers' workload being an issue for them. Of course, like I've mentioned before, marking and data is part of the workload issues. This is a summary of findings where the teachers reported high levels of workload that they perceived were only manageable through long working hours, which I think this is not a good thing, because the more work they have to do, the more time they have to spend to finish it, and I believe it would not be good, a good impact for them. So yeah, it's getting worse, they said. Treat teachers as human beings, not workhorses. So yeah, so this proves that teachers' workload is still an issue, although there are some efforts from governments trying to reduce this workload that still burdens teachers. So I think I've covered enough on the introduction to the issue, and I've given you some of the basic grounding facts that surrounds this issue of teachers' workload. So I think let's move on to the next presenter. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi. My name is Hanis Udau binti Muhammad Johari Udau, and I will continue the presentation with the causes of teachers' workload. Now, based on our online research, we have shortlisted 3 causes of teachers' workload, which are educational reform and restructuring, changing societal expectations, and increase in the complexity of teaching. Just like the modernization of the world, educational reform and restructure is an ongoing process. The quality of a country's education must be linear to what the future needs in order to fulfill the criteria of a globally competitive graduate who can actually survive and succeed in an industrialized world. Malaysia's education system has been developing since prior to our independence. The goal of education at that time, before independence, was to at least teach the basic skills of reading, writing, and arithmetic to the children. And a few years after our independence, the education aim was shifted from just teaching these basic skills to also fostering cultural unity among the major races in Malaysia, or Malaya at that time. And from there, the development and improvement of our education system, particularly in our curriculum, snowballed in order to address the changing goals for our education. Curriculum development for secondary schools in Malaysia started with the implementation of curriculum lama sekolah menengah in the late 70s, and it was replaced with curriculum baru sekolah menengah in the year 1989. In the year 1998, curriculum baru sekolah menengah was replaced with curriculum bersepadu sekolah menengah, and that was an impact of the launch of Sekolah Bestari in the year 1995. Now, this was when we started the integration of technology in our teaching and learning process. Then, in the year 2003, PPSMI or Pembelajaran dan Pengajaran Sains dan Matematik dalam Bahasa Inggeris was implemented to improve the command of English language among primary and secondary school students in Malaysia. This policy, however, was reverted and replaced with MBM-MBI in the year 2011. MBM-MBI or Memartabatkan Bahasa Melayu dan Memperkukuhkan Bahasa Inggeris was implemented to guarantee the use of Bahasa Melayu as the medium of instruction in schools, while ensuring students' mastery of both Bahasa Melayu as well as English language. Then, in the year 2017, our Ministry of Education introduced a new policy called Curriculum Standard Sekolah Menengah. KSSM was created in order to fulfill the needs of the new Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013-2025. The MEB 2013-2025 laid out a plan to raise the quality of Malaysia's education to be on par with the international standards. All these changes happened in a span of less than 30 years, and as a result, teachers would need to go through in-service trainings frequently, and they would also need to revise their syllabus and renew the lesson plans to make sure that they are prepared for the changes. And of course, all this will lead to increase of teachers' workload. The next cause of teachers' workload is the change in societal expectations. The interface between schools and the society has been evolving parallel to the improvement of our education system. In fact, a good relationship between a school and the community around it has proven to actually improve the quality of the school itself. But how does this relationship affect teachers' workload? This is due to the changing roles of the society. Now, as our society became more and more individualized, the government gradually began to view education as a means to meet various social agendas like reduction in unemployment or even the basic development of individuals. Back then, these social agendas were handled by parents, where they assumed the responsibilities for disciplining family members, and they even gave job trainings for the children. However, the society now has the expectations that education will do that for them, will fix these issues for them. These expectations forces teachers to spend more time dealing with social problems and learning how to deal with these social issues within the classroom settings, and this will increase the needs for classroom management skills. Other than that, teachers also have to spend more time for guidance and counseling to help students deal with issues like parental divorce, living with a single parent, or even poverty as a result of no working parents. The first two causes of teachers' workloads actually brings to the third one, which is the increase in the complexity of teaching. There are a number of teaching methodologies that a teacher can apply in his or her classroom. Education in schools back then only needs teachers to transmit information to their students. Classrooms back then were very teacher-centered, where students only need to copy down and memorize whatever the teacher taught them. This is obviously contrary to what teachers nowadays have to do. Teachers need to create student-centered classrooms that enables multiple sensory stimulation like visual, auditory, and tactile. These classes should also have a collaborative work environment which enables students to focus on inquiry-based and authentic real-world experiences. It is common to hear that a teacher should act as a facilitator in a classroom, but this does not translate to an easier job. It actually means the exact opposite. Teachers need to put more effort in the planning of their instructions and their materials in order to execute an effective teaching. Other than complex teaching methodologies, emotional labor is also one of the reasons why teaching is complex. Emotional labor refers to the process of managing feelings and expressions to fulfill the emotional requirements of a job. So, for example, flight attendants, they need to smile and be friendly all the time, even in stressful environments. Parallel to that, teaching is also a very emotional activity that, of course, involves emotional labor. Based on a research done by Hargreaves and Evans, 1997, it is claimed that this emotional labor requires a kind of acting. Not just acting out feelings superficially, but also consciously working oneself into experiencing the necessary feelings required to do one's job well. Now, however, when teachers are overwhelmed by the demands of change in the curriculum, those who are emotionally invested in teaching will feel guilty when they aren't able to provide the best education for their students. This just goes to show that teachers' workload would not just cost teachers time and physical health, but it also costs the emotional well-being of a teacher. That's all for the cost of teachers' workloads, and I'll pass the screen to my friend Aliff for the evidence of teachers' workloads.
Thank you so much to the previous presenters. First and foremost, my name is Muhammad Aliff bin Nailul Murad, and for my bit on this presentation, I would like to show out a few of the evidence we managed to find regarding the struggles that teachers face on a frequent basis. I have divided the evidence into two separate categories. First one being pre-COVID-19 and the other one is teachers' struggle during COVID-19. I believe this is the first time in our life that we have to go through a pandemic, and that is why I think it is relevant to separate this evidence. But some of the struggles listed are not limited to when or where it happens. Now we will take a look on struggles under the category pre-COVID-19. First one being keeping up with high expectation. From who? Mainly from the government, the school board and parents with the constant push for changes and reforms. I believe a little pressure is needed to make us do better and be better in certain scenarios. But there is a saying from the very famous movie, The Karate Kid, with the one with Jackie Chan in it, which is too much something is not good. Let's take an example. Water is always good, right? It hydrates you, boosts your skin health, beauty, etc. But if you drink an excessive amount of water, it makes you feel bloated, can cause overhydration, which can lead to headache and even dilutes important substance in our blood. I agree with the excerpt from this article on the last paragraph shown. We are increasing the demand on the curriculum and on the teachers and students to such a degree that we either fail to teach the basics and the essential in our school, or we offload a lot to this outside of school time. The curriculum becomes overloaded, and education is the first casualty. Sometimes we are all too focused on the next new thing until we forget the basic or the core elements of teaching. Next is the constant changes in education policies. This happened a few years back regarding on which language the science and mathematics subject should be taught with. This happened back and forth. It is Malay for 5 minutes and back to English in the next 5. Changes can be good, but constant changes can cause inconsistency, and the students will be the most affected ones. Here we can see an article from Malaysia Kini that mentions flaws of our Ministry of Education or other parties involved in implementing these non-stop changes. As stated before, we are too focused on the next new thing that sometimes we forget to really commit to the policies that have been made. Good things will always take time, so does the time of the implementation of these changes. A way to avoid constant unreasonable changes is the ministry has to do a proper research and development regarding the Malaysia education blueprint. Next one is nothing new, surprisingly. Teaching for sure will involve students, and students' involvement means the teacher will have to deal with their acts and behavior inside and outside of the classroom. As shown here, students nowadays tend to disrespect their teachers and are now braver than ever to do some very unethical actions. The article mentioned there are about 402 secondary schools throughout the country that are dealing with various discipline problems caused by the students. Even some of them are caught with drug usage, which is saddening to hear and know, because these students are way too young to jeopardize their future and life. These kinds of problems are making the teachers anxious, because the consequences of the students' action have a really big impact on the teachers themselves, the school, and especially the students. Next is too much clerical works. Teaching itself can already be stressful and take a lot of time, considering the time to plan the lesson and also the execution of the lesson. These clerical works are extra burdens for the teachers. These works are very time consuming, and the data is also very sensitive. A mistake in keying in the data can affect the students' records, which will also affect the school performance. As stated in the research shown, we agree with the recommendation made by the author, where ministry or the school administration should take a look into create a new position that specializes in data handling or clerical works that would significantly lighten the burden of the teachers. Plus, this new position can also create a new job opportunities around schools in Malaysia. Now moving on to the struggles that the teachers have to face during COVID-19. First one being extra workload on non-related matters to teaching. As we can see here, these are two tweets showing that the teachers have had to become a bunch of carpenters due to the ministry decision to reopen the school back in July after about 4 months of MCO. This proved the incompetence of our ministry in decision making again. Lesser students are needed to be in a classroom, yet there are no funds given to the schools to truly prepare for the student. The need to buy extra tables, and some of the teachers have to take out their own money or use their own money to buy sanitizers and face masks for the student, which are the essentials during this pandemic. Also, this other news is also a very recent one. Teachers are considered as babysitters by the parents. It is true that teachers teachers are the second parents of students, but apart from that, outside of school hours, parents have to understand that the teachers also have their own personal life. And the next one, having to cope with stress. Not everyone have the ability to cope with their stress. Mental health used to be a taboo subject, and due to this, some of the teachers find it hard or difficult to cope with their own stress. But thankfully, mental health are getting more attention from everyone because of how important it is. The article shown a program that will hopefully help the teachers to feel better regarding getting our situation, our new norm nowadays. And last but not least is teacher and student relationship. The relationship between students and teachers plays a major role in a successful learning and teaching. Everything is definitely easier to run in a classroom settings. Teacher gets to actually monitor their students' learning and behavior in the class rather than just talk to a monitor. Participation plays a major role to make a lesson successful, and I find learning online or online distance learning decrease the amount of participation by the student by a lot. After all, as mentioned in the article, nobody is trained to talk alone or talk to a screen. And that is all from me, and thank you so much for listening.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurlaili Izzati binti Abdul Rahim, and I will continue with the last part of this presentation, which is impacts of teachers' workload. Okay, for this subtopic, I will focus on only two main points or two impacts of teachers' workload, which is the first one is to how it can lead to positive classroom management methods to derail, and another one is how it can decrease in pupils' academic performance or achievement. Let's go to the first main point. Okay, under this main point, I included three other points below that, which each one of that will lead to positive classroom management methods to derail. And I will start with the first one, which is higher level of stress. Okay. Teachers who are saddled with an excessive workload in their careers are more likely to have high levels of stress, which results to their positive classroom management to derail. And let us shift this situation for a while. Okay, we will take it. We will see it in the perspective of a student. So even we as a students, sometimes when we are running toward the deadlines, and we are focusing on a lot of things at one point or at one time, it can be very stressful for us, and it can be quite draining also. So the same goes to the teachers. They are not only teaching in the classroom, they have other personal problems. They need to take care of the co-curriculum as well. So there was this one study which was carried out in 2016 by University of British Columbia researchers. They tracked the levels of stress hormones of more than 400 elementary students in different classes. So what they found was that teachers who reported higher levels of burnout had students with high levels of the stress hormone cortisol. So what is hormone cortisol? Okay, cortisol is actually the primary stress hormone in a human's body, which it has a very important and a very crucial role in helping the body to respond to stress. So imagine if as we as the teachers, we walk into the classroom and we bring all our workload, the stress, the stress that we are putting on our shoulders, and we bring in the negative vibes or the negative environment to the students, that will trigger the students' hormone cortisol, and can you see that how it can lead to the positive management or the positive environment of the classroom to be derailed. Okay, so When we bring stressful environment into the lesson, it will definitely lead to classroom tensions, and which could be very contagious to other students as well. So teachers that show higher levels of stress displayed fewer effective teaching strategies, including clear instruction, effective classroom management, and creation of a safe and stimulating classroom climate for their students. So sometimes teacher will not be able to control their anger or emotions while they are in the classroom, because of the workload. So that's because of the higher levels of stress, it will lead to the next point, which is it will result to negative approaches by the teachers. Okay. So when the teachers perceived feelings of burnout negatively, it can negatively impact their classroom instruction. So for example, they would become short on patience, and they might either yell or become sarcastic, and it would turn their students off to learning. That they will feel not interested into the lesson, or maybe this is what happened when the tensions or the stress goes unaddressed by the teachers. It can detract from positive classroom experiences. And we actually, as the teachers, even when we were in our high school, we can see that teachers, they always encourage us to ask questions. They want us to be brave in the class, and they want us to take risks that they are, as a teacher, unwilling to take. But without role models for behaviors that build emotional connections between the teachers and the students, how can students trust the teachers to care for them in these vulnerable places? So when students did not understand what the teachers are explaining, and they want to ask questions, but the teacher started to be angry, and they would raise their voice, and while repeating the explanation again, they might do it in a more sarcastic manner. So as a teacher, we should know that it actually yelling is not a good choice. It actually only makes teaching a cheerless slog. So I think it's very important for teachers to avoid yelling, and also try your very best to encourage students to ask questions in your class without feeling angry or feeling annoyed by that kind of question, even if you might be repeating it over and over again. Okay. So we will continue with the next point, which is worse learning environment. Okay. Stressful teachers, they might favor to use defensive rather than creative teaching methods, because they aim at dampening down and over-containing the class rather than inspiring and energizing it. So relationships and interactions in the class may be handled with a sense of efficiency and also speed. So teachers might be failing to be effectively connected to their students. So they might miss the class potential or fail to respond to its complex demands as the teacher's energy withdraws behind a protective barrier. As a result, students will not participate in your lesson, and they don't like the environment they are in. Students will feel demotivated, and they will never look forward to your next lessons, and which I think it's very serious, and your lesson will be a burden to them. They will feel like, sometimes we as a student, we feel, oh look, kelas ni, something like that. They will feel very stressful over your lesson, because they have been in that situation where when they ask questions, you are angry. When you are not asking questions, they are angry as well. So the students are in between. They don't know either for today's lesson you're going to be in a good mood or not in the good mood. So we will continue with the next point, which is decreasing in pupils' academic performance or achievement. I have another 3 points under this main point, which are overwhelming duties assigned to teachers, failure to complete syllabus, and also failure to apply a variety of teaching strategies. So the same as the first main point just now, all of these 3 other points, they actually related to each other, and how all of them will result to decreasing in pupils' academic performance and achievement. So we will start with the first one. which is overwhelming duties assigned to teachers. So we know that teachers play a very significant role towards academic performance, and therefore their workloads may affect the students' academic performances. So there was this one interview carried out by Ahmed Wafi. A teacher named Natrashi described teachers as leaders in our own classroom but slaves to the needs of others, because teachers, they are expected to do some other work which may not related to teaching, such as, you know, sometimes they need to manage sports day, or they need to keep in track of the students' attendance, they need to keying in sports and also curriculum marks. So all of this can result in teachers not being fully present in the classroom. And this indicates that teachers bear a very great workload, and which affects students' academic performance. And because they cannot be fully present in the classroom, that will lead to our next point, which is failure to complete syllables. Because of the teacher's workload, you know, they will rarely have time to prepare for class, or they don't really have time to plan for their lessons. You know, they need to go for, sometimes they need to go for meetings, or they will need to go for seminars, which sometimes it's not even related to the subjects that they teach, or to the curriculum. So teachers had no choice. They need to skip classes. When they compress everything in one particular lesson, it might be very heavy for the students, or maybe they are not able to catch up with everything at one particular lesson, and that's obviously can lead to your decreasing in your academic performances. Teachers' workload which are not related to the subject, or which might not be related to the curriculum, it will somehow affect and makes the teacher fail to complete the syllables. And because of that, it leads to the next one, which is failure to apply variety of teaching strategies. So teacher, they were rushing through the curriculum with little regard for the students' need, and they need to cover specific lessons with the students each day, which they ended up rushing everything. You know, they just like what I said, they need to compress everything at one time. So teachers' poor concentration on individual problems in the class makes it very difficult to allow teachers to pass through individual and to know each individual problem. So students different, and we know, even we as the students, we know that you and your friends, we will have different level of proficiency. How your friend accepts certain things might not be the same as you. So you have different learning strategies compared to your other friends. So these students' differences and also their learning needs can actually be better accommodated by teachers who employ a variety of teaching practices. But somehow teachers who are, you know, rushing through the curriculum, just like what I've stated earlier, it's very hard for the teachers to apply variety of teaching strategies. You know, you cannot give too much attention on the strategies. You will just focus on one. A commitment to good teaching and a concern for students' learning may involve teachers in many hours over and above normal classroom instruction, but often without complaints or stress, because it is what careful teachers have always done to make the students perform well, especially in their examinations and also in their studies. But when teachers encounter heavy workload and also stress in their jobs, it is when the results become poor. As a conclusion, teachers' workload can directly impact their learning and also teaching process. So when a teacher is stressed, you know, when the teachers are overwhelming by the workload and they feel overworked, so they have less time to focus on the students and also their lessons. So this time shortage transmits itself to the classroom and leads to feelings of insecurity and anxiety among students. What teachers can do is to try their very best to maintain positive classrooms or positive emotions while being in the classroom, and they should also try their very best to maintain good relationship with the students in order for them to avoid impacts of teachers' workload on the students. And that's all from us. We really hope that what we presented will benefit you in some ways. Thank you, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.